Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. So inshallah, we're going to begin. This time what I want to do is read a little bit of the text, and then we'll get into our introductory session, and then if we have time, come back to the text. Now, as we progress in this class, I want to start getting deeper and deeper into the text and try to cover some pages, inshallah. So, who remembers our muqaddimah? We finished reading the muqaddimah last week. So, Imam Shah Waliullah rahimahullah ta'ala, he says there are 5 chapters. And remember the 5 chapters. What were the 5 chapters in this book? So, he's going to be covering Uľūm al-Qur'an, or thoughts on Uľūm al-Qur'an, under 5 categories. Number 1 was the 5 Qur'anic sciences. Remember? So he's going to elucidate, and that's chapter 1. We're going to start that today. He's going to talk about the 5 Qur'anic sciences. And then the second topic, or the second chapter, has to do with the nazm of the Qur'an, the organization or the composition of the Qur'an, the structure of the Qur'an. So he has thoughts related to that. And then the third chapter, as you recall, was about the secrets behind the structure of the Qur'an. So it's kind of like an elaboration of the second chapter, but I guess he's digging deeper and trying to find the lata'if, some of the secrets, the subtle points that come out when it comes to the structure of the Qur'an. And then the fourth chapter, that's probably one of the most important chapters, is he's going to talk about the differences in tafsīr and try to deconstruct the idea why, or tackle the issue, why do we have differences in tafsīr? You know, why is it that we have so many views sometimes that seem to contradict from the Salaf, from the companions? So he's going to offer some thoughts on that. And then the 5th chapter, is, I put it under the heading, contextualizing the Qur'an. So this, you can say, is kind of like a miscellaneous chapter. Here he's going to talk about gharaib al-Qur'an. Gharaib are the unusual expressions in the Qur'an that aren't that common. You have to kind of understand what the terms mean. Also, he's going to talk about the very important idea of sabab al-nuzul. Remember, we mentioned that tension in the beginning of the class, that to what extent is the asbab al-nuzul of the verses important to their meaning, right? Because if you overemphasize asbab al-nuzul, then you basically reduce the Qur'an to something only for its particular era. This verse is only for the mushrikeen of Quraysh. This verse is only for the munafiqeen of Medina and for no one else. So if you emphasize that too much, as many people have done, you kind of reduce the universality of the Qur'anic message. So he has some unique insights into that. Again, as I mentioned, and we repeat it again and again, these are Shah Waliullah's thoughts based upon his experience and his expertise. And you're free to agree or disagree. That's one of the things when you read text that I like to emphasize, and I think it's important to keep in mind. Read this text, try to understand with an open mind what he's saying, and at the end of the day, always be open to other ideas. If you disagree, or if you have a better way, or you find another scholar with a better way of presenting certain points, never be intimidated or afraid to go in that direction. So, Bismillah, let's begin. So everyone has the PDF. I sent an email out to remind everyone that I don't have the resource to print out, the readings every week, but I did send you the email with the link to the PDF. This is the Arabic book for those who are new. It's hard to find it in the United States. I haven't found any carrier. But it's available in PDF, so you can just look it up, print out the pages, or print out chapters at a time and read along if you like to take notes, or just have like a tablet or a device where you read along. So we're going to be reading in Arabic. These are the English copies, by the way. So this is the English translation. I was able to get some find a wholesale distributor. I got a bunch of copies if anyone's interested. We're not going to be going through the English. This is an advanced class. We're going to read the Arabic text and translate as we go along. I want everyone to read the original. But at the same time, if you want to have a copy of the English to read on your own time, or to correlate it, feel free. You can, during the break or afterwards, come up to me. So now we're going to begin the text itself, the main body of the text, inshallah. Who wants to take a shot at reading? So we'll take, paragraph by paragraph or line by line. Do you have it open? Al-Bab al-Awwal. I don't know which edition you have, but it's...
The one you sent.
Okay. The one I sent, I think, is different from this one. It's roughly similar, but...
Yeah.
So it's Al-Bab al-Awwal fi bayan al-ulum al-khamsa التي يدل عليها القرآن العظيم نصا. Yes.
I noticed that, and I have a different edition that it's different because someone was reading it.
Okay, yeah.
And it was
So-
skipping over portions of.
Yeah.
of
So
the text.
unfortunately, this book was written in Persian originally, and it was translated into Arabic by several people. So there's a couple of editions out there. So the one, there's the edition we're using is the one translated by Sa'id Ahmad al-Balanpuri.
Yeah.
But even his, there's depending on the publisher, the pages might be different, and some of the words might be, like when the publisher edits and they bring new editions, sometimes they change some expressions. So, unfortunately, the PDF that's available, it's an excellent edition. It has the introduction, the foreword by Sheikh Abul Hassan Ali Nadwi, which we read. This particular one that I have doesn't have that foreword. But I think, one of the previous seminars, one of the brothers was reading a different edition, and it wasn't that off. Like, we were able to follow pretty closely, inshallah. So one of the things we're going to do is, one of the purposes here is to teach you how to read a text, right? So I put a makeshift whiteboard here. So what we're going to do is we're going to really take this text apart. So we'll read line by line. I'll translate. If anyone has questions about some of the lines, some of the words, ask me. But we want to summarize, or when you read a text, you want to summarize all the main points of a scholar, right? So what's the first chapter, the heading, and then what's the first point he makes, and then, the subsections, and so on and so forth. So once you do that, and feel free to underline, and then you can go back and you can look at that skeleton outline that you made, and you can recall some of these ideas. So it's very important, especially advanced topics like this, and advanced scholars with whose mind is very is brilliant and they have a grasp of a lot of things. It's important to summarize. So what we'll do is, the text is called Al-Fawz al-Kabir, right? Every week, as we read along, we'll make headings, right? So we're doing chapter 1, Al-Bab al-Awwal, chapter 1. What's the title of the chapter? So did you find?
في بيان العلوم الخمسة.
Yeah, في بيان العلوم. Al-Bab al-Awwal.
Page 18.
You're probably in the PDF, page 18.
التي يدل عليها القرآن العظيم نصا.
Okay, so translate that. So what's the title of the chapter? So you can put in your notes the title, right?
The 5 sciences
Okay. التي يدل عليها.
which are dealing with the Quran and the text, the greatness of the text.
No. Okay. التي يدل عليها. Okay. Al-Quran al-Azim, the great Quran, the majestic Quran. يدل عليها, that the Quran alludes to. يدل, dalla yadullu means the Quran is, that's the subject of that is the Quran. التي يدل عليها القرآن العظيم نصا. Through the text, the noble Quran is alluding to the 5 sciences. So 5 Quranic sciences. That's the title of this chapter. Okay, the 5 Quranic sciences. Okay. So, okay. So let's see. Okay. So Al-Bab al-Awwal. Notice. So what does Bab mean? So the Kitab is the book, right? In books of Hadith, you have many kutub, right? So you have Kitab al-Iman, and then you have Bab such and such. So when you have a larger book, like a book of Hadith, you have many kitabs. They're separate books. So like book of faith, book of maghazi, book of battles, and within them you have chapters, and chapter in Arabic is bab. So a smaller book like this won't have different kitabs. It's just one kitab. but they'll have bab, and within the bab, if there's a subsection, what is it called? If you go to the next page, you'll see al-Fasl al-Awwal. Okay, al-Fasl is like a subsection or subchapter. So, this is al-Bab al-Awwal, and 2 pages later you have al-Fasl al-Awwal. That means, what's this first part? If we deconstruct it, what is it? This you can say is the introduction. So I'll call it introduction. If you put, do you prefer using numbers or letters in the outlines? I mean, we need to have one standard scheme. Letters? Numbers. Okay.
Roman numerals.
Roman numerals? Okay. So if we put Roman numeral, well, when you get to like 36, how are you going to do that? That's so complicated. Up to 10, it works really easy. After that, it gets very difficult. All right, طيب, inshallah. So the first one, I would call it introduction. So the first 2 pages is an introduction to this chapter. Okay? So Al-Bab al-Awwal, the title is 5 Quranic Science. I'm not writing everything out there. You need to write in note. So now what we're going to read now for the 2 pages is the introduction. And then it starts Al-Fasl al-Awwal, the first subsection. Okay? So what does he say in the introduction? Let's read. Fadl.
ليعلم أن معاني القرآن المنصوصة لا تخرج عن 5 علوم.
Okay, so what's your rough translation?
Let it be known that the meanings of the Quran, that المنصوصة based on the text, لا تخرج عن 5 علوم is
do not exceed right?
5 sciences.
Okay, so what he's saying, the first point he makes is that the entire Quran, the meanings of the Quran, all the verses, don't go beyond 5 things. Every single thing in the Quran relates to one of these 5 things, right? And he's going to mention what are those 5 sciences. He calls them ulum, sciences. So every verse falls under one of these 5 sciences. What's number 1?
علم الأحكام.
Okay.
وهي الواجب والمندوب والمباح والمكروه والحرام سواء كانت من قسم العبادات أو من قسم المعاملات أو من تدبير المنزل أو من السياسة المدنية وتفصيل هذا العلم منوط بذمة الفقيه.
Okay, perfect. Now let's do a summary of that. It's very straightforward. What's the first science? He calls it ilm al-ahkam. I need you to know the Arabic terms, like with the headings and the names of the sciences, know the Arabic. So ilm al-ahkam. So the science of ahkam. What's ahkam? Rulings, right? So rulings. So I'll put rulings here. Okay, the science of rulings. So what's the details? What did he say? They are, what are the 5 rulings? Wajib, mandub, mubah, makruh, haram. So everyone knows those 5, in fiqh or Islamic law, when scholars discuss ahkam, every action, if you put a hukm or a ruling on it, it falls under 5 possibilities, right? Either it's wajib or fard, which is, what is it in English? Mandatory or obligatory. And then what's mandub? Yeah. Mustahab or mandub, they're 2 synonyms. So what does that mean in English? Recommended. And then go through the spectrum with me. So you have obligatory, recommended, and then in the middle, neutral or mubah. All right, it's not rewarding or there's no sin either way. And then when you get to the negative side, there are 2 more. Hated, which is makruh, disliked, right, or hated. And then finally, haram, absolutely forbidden, right? So, yeah.
I know that the Hanafi scholars differentiated between wajib and fard. Did Shahriullah?
That's a good question. It's hard to extrapolate here because the words are not his. He wrote in Farsi. So we'd have to look at the original, see what he. But here, al-wajib means, fard, this is synonymous. Okay. So it's not getting into those 5 difference here. Here, the word used is wajib.
Yeah, he's keeping it 5.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that, in any case, even if it's Hanafi school, it would be only on certain instances in terms
it's very limited. There's some limited. Some of these 5, I'm not going to say what they are, but okay. So I'm making my outline. So Roman numeral 1 is the introduction. We're in the introduction. So the first thing he mentioned was point A. What are the 5 sciences? So he lists the 5 sciences. We're going to have under A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first one is the science of rulings, and there are 5, right? I'm not going to list all of them. So the 5 rulings, right? That's standard. In any book of fiqh, you'll find the same 5 rulings. There's some, when you get into the details, like fard is sometimes divided, but, for our purposes, let's not go there yet. Number 2. So what's the second science?
Is mubah defined as doubtful or mubah?
No. Doubtful is something different. It's not under these categories. Doubtful is where you're not sure where it falls. So it's slightly different from this. Second science? Ilm al-Jadal. Okay. Why don't you read that one? So Ilm al-Jadal. That's the second science. How would you translate Ilm al-Jadal? Jadal, what does Jadal mean in Arabic?
Debatable.
Yeah, to go back and forth, debate. Also argue. Argumentation is Jadal. Debate. Mujadala, right? So here the science of, you can say debate, or the science of, polemics. So here, this book translates as polemics. I mean, I don't know how, that's accurate, but how many people are familiar with that word? How often is it used, So the science of polemics or refutation. Polemics, let's keep it polemics, okay? I'll put polemics.
What's the primary subject that's being debated or discussed?
Iman. Guidance. So that's just the idea of convincing people, da'wah. That's what he's talking about.
Rhetoric?
Yeah. Rhetoric is also, what would be better, polemic or rhetoric?
For Jadal?
Jadal, yeah. Rhetoric is more like, giving your stance. But Jadal goes both ways, right?
Polemics
So-
makes sense because it's
Debate.
polemics makes sense.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, so let's leave it polemics for now. If anyone comes up with another word, maybe, we'll come up with our own preferred word. For now, science of polemics. So what does he say? Let's see what he says. So read what it says after that.
وهو مجاهدة مع الفرق الأربعة
فرق الأربعة.
ومن اليهود والنصارى والمشركين والمنافقين وتبين هذا العلم
منوط
بذمة المتكلم.
Okay, good. So here he says this is, the refutation or the argument, haja in Arabic in the Quran. Alam tara ila alladhi haja Ibrahim rabbahu. Have you not seen Ibrahim when he was debating with the king about his Lord, right? He was debating, he was arguing. This is exactly the same thing. So al-muhajja with al-firaq al-arba'a dalla, 4 deviant groups. Okay, so this is the polemics is how the Quran deals with 4 deviant groups. What are they?
يهود.
Okay, Yahud, Nasara, Mushrikeen, Munafiqeen.
Wouldn't
Okay.
it better to say misguided? Because Dalla, doesn't it connote misguidance as opposed to deviance? Am I wrong? I don't
No, you're right. But
Oh.
I'm trying to see what's the difference between deviant and misguidance. My mind,
Oh.
when I use it, I kind of use it in the same. But maybe there is a fine difference. Because
that deviant could still be a believer.
yeah,
Sorry, I was.
I know, but like a
Yeah.
deviant. So if you use dala with mu'min, you can say that. I mean, it's used all the time.
Yeah.
So in the context of a believer, that would fit better.
Yeah.
But philosophically,
There are deviants as well.
yeah, they deviated from the straight
Yeah.
path, and then that's how they wound up. Outside of
It's
Yeah.
like similar to what we said, غير المغضوب عليهم, like those
Yeah,
But-
those who went straight.
went astray. Yeah, so it's either misguided, like trying to find the best translation.
Arabic is tough to translate.
Yeah, that's why we're reading the Arabic. And we want to stick to the Arabic as much as we can.
Some say that even among the Muslims are those who went straight.
Yeah. So I mean, when he gets into so what are these 4 deviant groups? Okay, they're Jews, Christians, the mushrikeen, the idolaters or idol worshippers, or pagans, however you want to translate it, and then the munafiqeen, those who pretend to be believers and they're not. So the point he makes is, so it's important to understand he's trying to say, and he's going to say more explicitly that out of all the possibilities of deviation in the world, anyone who deviates, they fall into one of these four. So these are your four basic types. So Shah Waliullah, when he looks at these, he's not just looking at Yahud, okay, these were the people in the time of the Prophet who believed this, or the Nasara, or those who were Trinitarians in the time of the Prophet only. For him, these are broad categories. So for him, so he's making everything universal now. So ilm al-jadal is the Qur'anic approach of refuting and arguing and debating with all the possible deviant groups, and there are four. So dealing with the four deviant groups. In the first point, the five rulings, at the end he said, I don't think we translate, وَتَفْصِيلُ هَذَا الْعِلْمَ مَنُوطٌ بِذِمَّةِ الْفَقِيهِ. This is the domain of the faqih, the first science, right? It's the job of the faqih, the jurist, to really dig into here and analyze it and find out the details. This one, with the polemics, what is it the job of? He says, al-mutakallim, bi-dhimmat al-mutakallim. So mutakallim is a theologian, right? Kalam. Kalam is the science of theology it's translated in so many different ways, and scholars mean different things when they use kalam. Sometimes a negative term, sometimes a positive term. Here, he's using it in the sense, classically, kalam was a science of theology. What it is, iman. What makes our faith different from other faiths. So for him, this is theology. Theologically, how we're different from these four deviant groups. So this is the domain of the theologian. So you can say domain of the jurist, domain of the theologian.
Not to get into the Arabic much, but I'm just wondering, does that mean like is contingent upon the protection of the theologian?
Yeah, like the responsibility. That's what it means. Like this is in the responsibility of the faqih, right? That's in Urdu, you have zumidari, right?
Like their expertise.
Yeah, it's their domain. It's entrusted to them. It's a responsibility. Like Urdu, you have zumidari, right? Comes from the same word.
Okay.
Yeah, the dhimma, the dhimmi is the non-Muslims who live in the Muslim state, right? That's where it comes from.
That's where Zimidari comes from?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's all related. When you get into language, everything's related. But the dhimmi is a non-Muslim minority in a Muslim state, right? Why are they called dhimmi? Because they have the protection of the state. It's the responsibility of the state to protect them, right? So dhimmatil mutakallim. Okay, so that's the second. So polemic. What's the third science? Who wants to do the third? Okay, Afnan, you do the third.
التفكير بآلاء الله.
بآلاء الله. Okay.
بآلاء الله وهو بيان خلق السماوات والأرض والإلهام العباد ما تحتاجون إليه وبيان صفات الله الكاملة.
Okay, so علم التذكير بآلاء الله. That's a strange term. Very classical term. It's not used that much. Tadhkir, what's tadhkir from dhikr? To remind, right? Tadhkir is to give a reminder. So reminding about what? Ala illah. What's ala illah?
It's the exaltedness.
No, that's ala with the ayn. Ala with the hamza.
The asma.
Okay, there's a verse, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. That's where it comes from. It's favors or blessings or the things Allah blessed us with, the graces, right? So this is reminding others of the favors of God, right? So where did I put my? Okay, so reminder of God's blessings. I think that's a good translation. God's blessings. Reminder of God's blessing. So the detail, we read it. What did he say? It's وَهُوَ بَيَانْ خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Creation of the heavens and the earth. Right? The creation of the heavens and the earth. What else does he say? وَإِلْهَامُ الْعِبَادِ مَا يَحْتَاجُونَ إِلَيْهِ. This is inspiring the creation with what they need. This is, all the things Allah blessed us with, the ability to use iron, the ability to make houses out of mountains, the ability to, do agriculture and bring water into the crops and the crafts and trade and all these things. Allah mentions them in the Quran again and again. وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ. The ships that human beings make that sail the seas, filled with that which benefits human beings. Where does that come from? It comes from Allah's inspiration, right? So this is creation. It's all the human inventions, creativity. وَبَيَانْ صِفَاتِ اللَّهِ الْكَامِلَةِ. And also clarifying or presenting Allah's perfect attributes. Okay? So, God's blessing, that's a great translation. Everything, all of God's blessings in the world, whether it's creation, whether it's even the things that human beings do, because that's from the inspiration of God, or whether it's God Himself, His characteristics, His sifat, right? So this is, and if you think about it, that's really, the Quran is filled with that. Yes?
So he's going to break down the science of reminding people?
Yeah. There's gonna be a whole series of thoughts on that. Each one is gonna get into details. Yeah. Right now he's just listing them and give you a brief idea about them. So be patient.
Is there a purpose in the order?
There must be. That's a good question. This kind of analysis is like, so when you read a text, first time you read it, you understand it, you try to understand what the author is saying. And then the second level of analysis to really get into why he said what he said, why he used these words, what was the order like. So that's like a secondary, deeper analysis. For sure, he must have had an order in mind. And then he's going to discuss it in that order in the subsequent chapters.
Could you please repeat what ilham and
Ilham is inspiration. Ilham. So what God inspired human beings in terms of what they need. Like, what is that? That's our need for shelter, our need for trade, our need for beauty in our clothes and all these things, the styles that we have in our clothes, our dress, our food, our spices. All that is inspiration of God, inspiration of Allah Azza wa Jal. So that's what he's talking about. So, you might think, okay, why is he talking about that here? Because Shah Waliullah is not like, remember going back to the introduction, he's not like an ordinary scholar. He's trying to tie everything together, including sociology, political science, and theology and fiqh. For him, everything is one unitary whole. So he has this holistic approach. So that's why he's going to refer to agriculture here. He's going to refer to politics in the context of Quranic sciences. So to him, everything is related, and great scholars, that's how they think. Okay, so ilm tadhkir bi ala illah. Okay, that's the third. Who wants to read the fourth? Okay, why don't you do the fourth, Ambassador?
علم التذكير بأيام الله وهو بيان الوقائع التي أحدثها الله سبحانه وتعالى من قبيل تنعيم المطيعين وتعذيب المجرمين.
Okay, so this is reminder of Ayyamillah, God's days, right? Ayyamillah. So that's a peculiar expression, God's days. Okay. Ayyamillah. It's in the Quran. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. And not وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These are the days we give human beings. A good day, then a bad day. Victory and defeat. So by God's days, what he's talking about, so he's you might say, okay, what does he mean? He tells you, وَهُوَ بَيَانْ الْوَقَائِعِ الَّتِي أَحْدَثَهَا اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. Those actual events that Allah brought about. In other words, history. That's another way of looking at it. History, events, what actually happened, and everything's from God. Everything that happened, Allah brought it about, right? So this is a reminder of the days of God, all the occurrences, and what he says, min qubayl, two types. Tan'im al-muti'in, whether they're good occurrences that are a reward for people who obey God, or they're punishment for the those who don't obey, or the criminals. So that means every trial that happens in human life, every rise of a nation or fall of a nation, it's either Allah's blessing to reward those who are righteous or pious or those who worship Him, or it's a punishment for those who are wicked, who are unjust. So that's generally why history happens. So this is a Muslim view of history. So all of history for him is ayyamillah. Everything that happens is ayyamillah. There's always a reason. Allah has a wisdom. We might not understand it, but broadly speaking, it's either punishment or a blessing, right? And that's what he means by God's history. Okay.
Sorry, could you do the Tan'im?
Tan'im from ni'mah. Tan'im is active. Na'ama yuna'imu tan'ima.
Tan'im, okay.
To give ni'mah, to give blessing, to give.
Muti'in?
Ta'a, right? Muti'in is a plural for those who obey. Okay. And ta'adhib from adhab, from punishment. So this is the active form.
Yeah.
And mujrimeen, right? Okay. And the fifth science, just finish it off, the last one.
علم التذكير بالموت وما بعده من
Okay.
الحشر والنشر والحساب والميزان والجنة والنار.
Okay, everyone understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Death and what's beyond. I'll put death and after. Or afterlife. So, step back and now let's look at what we wrote down. So in the Quran, either Allah is telling us what we have to do is haram, wajib, or what to avoid, or it's a verse that's addressing mushrikeen or any of those deviant groups, or it's a verse that's reminding us of Allah's blessings, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, or it's history, qasas, Surah Al-Qasas, what happened with the Anbiya, what happened with وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ, all of history that happened, or so much of the Quran is about death and akhirah and what's going to happen Yawm al-Qiyamah. So this is a brilliant way to summarize the Quran. All of Quran falls under these 5 sciences. Okay, there's not the only way to look at it. You can say, some people divide the Quran into 3 types. There's all of Quran is under Tawheed, Risala, and Akhirah. Right, that's another way of looking at it. It's saying the same thing, but now Shah Waliullah, he's kind of clarifying. He's dividing to 5, and it's really useful. I think. There's nothing missing here.
I'm a bit surprised. I remember maybe this falls under reminder and Allah like akhlaq. That's a huge portion of the Quran as well.
Okay, so where do you think akhlaq would fall?
Number 3, mumkin?
No.
Or maybe 5.
Inspiration to man.
Okay, that's very good. Everyone's thinking now. Okay, so inspiration to man, would it fall there? Like for me, I think it's somewhere else.
I think it's number 1.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Why?
It's number 1 because it's dealing with your character and
Behavior.
the good and the bad of your character.
Okay, but what he says in number 1, how would it? He says 5 rulings, right? How would it fall under that?
The Quran tells us what are our
Mustahab, right?
Yeah, what are our
Akhlaq
duties.
is either wajib or mustahab, right? That's exactly under the ruling. So, what is the ruling? It's not just, you're thinking maybe haram and halal only, but there's a whole range. So, mustahab, what are those good things you're supposed to be doing in your life? That maybe not are wajib, but it's definitely something Allah encourages. So, that's akhlaq. So, it would fall here also. And it could also fall here, with the polemics, Allah mentions the bad akhlaq of some of those who went astray. So, they're kind of all related, but generally akhlaq would be here. Think of anything else. Like, this is what you should be doing. Look at these 5. Look at it critically. Try to think, okay, try to find a verse that doesn't fit. And then, you can see if the categorization is not the best. But, that's a great way of thinking. Okay. So the 5 sciences. So this is page 1. We're done with page 1. Alhamdulillah.
So you think creed will fall under 3?
Creed would probably fall under, I think, 2.
بيان صفات الله الكاملة.
Oh, yeah. So creed, yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting. So for some people, aqidah. So in some people's minds, they would divide up Quran according to aqidah. Everything, all the beliefs would be separate. But you can see from his mind, he's mixing it. He doesn't have a separate category. So sifatillah would fall under here, but it will also fall under much of aqidah is polemics. Where the Jews went astray, where the mushrikeen went astray, what shirk is. Half of everything dealing with the mushrikeen is shirk. right? And that's aqidah. So aqidah is, can fall into here. Also haram rulings, never fall into shirk.
I'm thinking polemics because there's so many ways when you talk about asma, what's the fact.
Mostly polemics, but sometimes Allah just mentions His attributes as beautiful attributes, perfect attributes, without necessarily debating. I mean, you use them to debate, but I think when He means polemic, He's saying, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, Ta'alaw ila kalima. That's what He means. Allah is addressing them directly. That's what He means by this. But of course, you can use the whole Quran as polemics, but He's talking about how Allah is doing it, what Allah is doing with His verses.
This
Oh,
seems
he's
much
the
more organic, right? Like when you're talking about topics in Tawheed and Aqidah, actually how they relate to human beings, how we should apply them.
You can say it's more practical, perhaps. Yeah. So I mean, not. I think I don't think other. It would be interesting to see how other scholars divide up the message of the Quran, right? So I know Mawlana Maududi rahimahullah, Tawheed, Risala, Akhirah, grew up reading his books. That's generally how all of the Quran is under these three: Tawheed, Risala, Akhirah, the three themes of the Quran. And then there are other scholars that say, okay, every verse has to do with Tawheed. That's what the whole Quran is, Tawheed. And in a sense, that's right too. All of Quran is Tawheed, one category, but with details. So there's so many ways of doing it. There was a mushaf that came out a couple of years ago with it was color coded with themes, right? So they had, I think, 4 or 5 themes. I forgot what they were, but like every page you'll have part of the page is green if it has to do with aqidah, part of the page is. So they actually divide up the Quran, whoever published that mushaf, according to fixed themes, and there were only 4 or 5. So it just came to my mind. I don't remember what they were. It'd be interesting to look up how they divided up the themes of the Quran and the message of the Quran.
No, but wow, like the ahkam makes so much sense. Like just thinking like, yeah, ayyunabi that talaqtum an-nisa fa'iddatun thalathatun, like that's ahkam.
Yeah, and the
that's
inheritance.
Also,
look at the inheritance verse.
yeah.
It's all ahkam. It's nothing else. But then there's verses speaking directly to mushrikeen. Right? It has nothing. Then there are verses about history, verses about Allah's sifat and nothing else, and so much. There's no page without mention of the akhirah. That's a huge portion of the Quranic message. Okay, so we're not done with the introduction. So we're still in Roman numeral 1, introduction. Okay, what tafsir? Did you read what tafsir هذه العلوم الثلاثة?
No.
وذكر الأحاديث والآثار المتعلقة بها يرجع إلى الواعظ والمذكر.
Okay, so this is great. Okay, let's do it this way. The domain of the rulings, faqih. Okay, jurist. I'll put jurist. Domain of polemics, theologian, right? Mutakallim. Now, what is he saying here? He says the domain هذه الثلاثة, هذه العلوم الثلاثة. What are the 3?
This is refining really of this. It's
Okay, but what do you mean that these 3 sciences?
The previous 3.
Yeah, so the last 3, right? So these last 3, their domain goes to who? What does he say?
All the tadhkir ones.
Yeah. Al-Wa'id, Al-Mudhakkir. Wal-Mudhakkir. These are people, preachers,
yeah, preachers,
right? Du'at. I don't know, do you guys like preacher? Preacher has a sense, connotation of a Baptist preacher, and like that whole thing comes up in my mind. I don't know.
Well,